just got here. Go ahead and vote. All right, let me share my screen while I'm giving you a last minute chance to vote for or against this new proposition. All right. Bum, 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 bum. All right, so I am now closing the poll. All right, great, excellent. Everybody voted. So here are the results. So currently the favor is in the 4. So let's see how against is going to work against that to try and convince everybody the opposite. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and stop sharing those poll results just so you're not distracted by it. Okay. So I know someone told me who the constructive was and I forget already. So constructive, whenever you're ready, I'm going to get that timer going. So here we go.
So COVID-19 has impacted students' lives for students who are already in college, and it has caused a much higher dropout rate. And so that has also affected the enrollment rate in general. And since for fall of 2020, it has dropped by 2.5%, according to a study done by the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center. And so that is just a recession of the number of students attending college in general. And some people, although not choosing not to go to college ever, they're taking a gap year. However, if you take a gap year, that makes it less likely for you to graduate in general. And one student, according to an interview conducted by USA Today, they said they feel like if they don't go the first year, they're going to lose all the education they had. And so in general, by not going to college, they're decreasing their future job opportunities because most jobs require a college education, but they aren't getting that education. So that's going to cause it's going to make it much more difficult for college students of this generation to get an education if they choose to drop out because they simply can't afford or they don't have time with their other responsibilities. And unenrollment has spiked since May 2020, and teenagers and college age Americans already had the highest unemployment rate of any major working group at 14%. And so that already makes it difficult for teenagers to be able to pay that tuition in general. And so COVID-19 has made it all the more difficult for them. Students also report that they're not getting the full college experience that they are paying for. They're just sitting at home. They're not even allowed to go to dorms. Most of them have to stay home or buy an apartment. And one student reported saying, "I am not learning anything online, I'm just memorizing stuff." And so there's just a lower level of engagement because they're not meeting their teachers, they're not meeting any classmates in person, they're just expected to do projects over Zoom. And it has highly impacted students in lower class areas and especially community colleges because they have a lot of responsibilities outside of school, and a lot of them are like the first people in their family to seek higher education, and so they are also taking care of their family and working jobs outside of school, so they don't have time to work those jobs and make enough money to pay for college and take care of their family and stuff like that. And so basically just the recession of college students will have a huge impact in the number of adults with a college education for this coming generation, which will just impact the future employment and impact the statistics of the country and education levels and job levels in general. So it's just going to have a long-lasting effect on America's public education and on their rating of education worldwide.
All right, thank you, Alyssa. Much appreciated. All right, so we're going to go ahead to the other side and we're going to, hold on. I'll start that timer again, I promise. All right, and we're going to start the constructive speech for the con side. Are you ready? Thank you. Here we go.
Right, so I'm sure many would agree that the cost of education is incredibly high for a world where education is a direct correlation to status and success. But with the economic situation during this pandemic, it is not the time to force colleges to lessen their tuitions. Simply put, colleges are losing a lot of money, much like families and other businesses during this economic times. So first of all, you mentioned, yes, there is less enrollment, and that affects the colleges almost the same amount as it affects the students. Because they lose a lot of money that they were expecting when they accepted students. Also, there's a ton of additional costs due to COVID. There's new softwares that they need to go online. There's training that they need to help the teachers use these softwares, and they need to ensure that students are still receiving quality education. Also, even though the campus is not being used, there still needs to be maintenance for these buildings so that after COVID, hopefully that these buildings will still be there. Also, if we want to return sooner, they'll need more cleaning supplies and they'll need more staff to keep everyone safe when reopening. The New York Times says that reopening colleges under COVID could add an extra 10% to regular operating expenses. Also, yes, you said that a lot of families are losing a lot of money, so we need to focus on the families that need it the most. We find that when tuition lowers, financial aid significantly decreases. According to Jessica Dickler from CNBC, 40% of parents who didn't plan to apply for federal aid now will as a result of the pandemic. So instead of lowering our tuition, we need to create more opportunities for financial aid so we're actually helping the families that need it the most. This will also increase enrollment, allowing for more opportunities for more families, and then that, again, it helps the college at the end. Also, we don't want to add to the list of people affected. Teachers are humans, teachers are people, teachers are a part of families, and they still need to be paid what they were expecting, so we don't add to the list of families that are affected during this time. I also wanted to mention students are receiving the same credits as previous years. So many schools have freeze tuitions already, meaning that students are not paying any more than they did during the 2019-2020 school year. And while many students might say, like you gave examples, they're not getting the same quality of education this year, professors such as Robert Massa, who's an adjunct professor at the University of Southern California, says that, in fact, at least for my class, which was small at the graduate level, I would say that students learned more because it was online. He explains that online, students have access to more resources, they can collaborate better because of things such as discussion boards and small discussions that are held in breakout rooms that aren't very easy to conduct in person. You also, at the end, you talked about how people lost the college experience. Many things that you would consider the college experience, they're not actually covered by tuition. So it's not the fault of colleges that the pandemic has occurred. It's not the fault of colleges that activities that usually are supplied by their campus can no longer happen because of the pandemic. Most of these activities, such as labs, dorms, clubs, they all require a separate fee, such as an activity fee, or for dorms in the cafeteria, a boarding fee that's not related to tuition. And colleges are not at fault for students that take a gap year and feel like they have lost a year of education. Yes, maybe if we gave them more
All right, Mutant, you, great job. All right, wonderful constructive speeches. So now we're going to move on to our first crossfire. Whoops, sorry, I keep starting the time accidentally. So the pro side gets to begin. I'm sorry. Whoa. Okay, here, let me go to the next page. First cross, pro gets to start. So are you ready to rumble? Here we go. Remember, a minute 30 per side. Pro.
So you argued that they still need money for maintenance. However, it's much less expensive to pay maintenance when it's not being used than while it is being used. And students are expected to pay for maintenance for dorms that they're never seeing these dorms. They're told that they're just sent back home to with their parents, or they have to pay for an apartment, but they expected to be able to live the dorms, which is covered by their tuition, and they're still paying for those dorms while also paying those added expenses of paying for their own uh, water bill and light bill and internet bill, and they're expected to have internet access at all times, and they can't go to they don't have access to public Wi-Fi because the places where they could get public Wi-Fi, such as libraries or like cafes or Starbucks that would have these public Wi-Fi's that many students were going to so that they could do schoolwork, they can't go there because they would be at risk of being exposed. And so, and also, even though the college experience is not covered by tuition, it's still things that they're missing out on, and it is unfair that people who already graduated had access to these experiences like internships and being able to engage with professionals and being able to talk in person with notable professionals in the field that they want to go into.
All right. So now we get to switch to the other side. Sorry, I can unmute you now. Go ahead.
Yeah. So first, I want to address the dorms. So that's not a part of tuition. And many colleges have not given out a boarding fee because students are not using the dorms. And so only students that were using dorms paid for that amount of time that they were living there. And also, if we want to eventually return back to our buildings and we want to return to our normal schedules, we're going to have to keep the maintenance of the building. And the whole reason why it would cost more is if we want to go back, we're going to have to spend much more money on cleaning and keeping everyone safe with materials and masks and all that. And that's going to cost a lot of money. And it's not, no one created the pandemic. No one wanted this to happen. It's not the college's fault that people are missing an experience. Just because it was on their campus doesn't mean that they have any control over whether or not that can happen. So we shouldn't force things like this to lose money just because of something they can't control. And I wanted to ask you, where do you think all the money is going to come from when we want to go back? Or when we lessen tuition, where is the money going to come from?
All right. And time is up. Great crossfire. Let's go ahead and we're going to move on to the next section here. But first, before we move on to our rebuttals, is now a good time to take a break? Do teams want a break? Remember, you can or choose not to do it. So who wants a break? Nina nodded yes or no. Yeah. All right. Break time for teams. Okay. Your break. Go ahead, grab your phones. Go ahead, call your partner. It begins now. Make sure you're muted. Oh, well, that's, I don't know. Okay. Well, it begins when I click that timer, but go ahead. And then if you don't want to use the full 2 minutes, just come back and let me know. We're done. 13 seconds. All right, break time is up. Stop strategizing, hang up those phones, and come on back. All right. So now we're going to move into the rebuttals, and I finally fixed it. So now that the con is officially slated as first. All right. Audience, you're doing fantastic. Debaters, you're doing fantastic. So let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. In a report from the American Council on Education, 75% of presidents graded their institution's overall financial health in fall of 2019 as being either excellent or good. However, only 58% of presidents graded their institution's financial health as either excellent or good in fall of 2020. In short, colleges just don't have the money to waive or even lower tuition. They need to pay teachers the same amount because teachers are still doing their jobs and they still need to be paid. And they need to focus on the families who are going to apply for financial aid and are going to request that they need more help this year because, as we know, a lot of people lost their jobs. And so if you lower tuition across the board, the people who can still pay the full tuition won't pay as much as they should, right? And so if full tuition costs $50,000 and let's say tuition is $40,000 and they use the extra $10,000 for aid, then if they lower the tuition to $40,000, then there's no money for aid to give to other people who need it. And so wealthy families who typically pay more to contribute to fund grants and other financial aid will pay less. And so with well-off families paying less, college will have less revenue to redistribute as aid in the future to those who are financially struggling. So even if lowering tuition in the moment sounds reasonable, it will have many more long-term repercussions than short-term benefits and won't be worth it. Like Nina said, students are receiving the same credits as they did when they were in person. And while the education and the teaching style may be different now that it's online, teachers are trying their best to teach the same material under these circumstances. And obviously, as we know, we have breakout rooms and we have check-ins, and there are all of these things that are put in place to make the online learning experience easier. And obviously, it's not perfect for everyone, and sure, going back to school would be ideal, but colleges aren't going to send people back to school because that puts people at risk, and we don't want to increase the chance that there will be more people who die from this virus, all because people just want their college experience. Additionally, the pandemic has also lowered enrollment rates for every type of university, but community colleges have been hit the hardest. Community college enrollment, which is the most affordable kind of college, has dropped 19% from March 2020, according to a study done by the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center. Community colleges are vital in our education system as they provide a college degree to people who can't afford to go to a private four-year university. A lower enrollment means less money that the college has, and with all of the extra costs that the pandemic has brought, most community colleges will barely have enough money to keep the building running as well as doing online school, and much less lower tuition for people. And I know that one of your big points is the fact that there's the loss of the college experience, but lowering tuition isn't going to give the students the college experience that they're looking for. Lowering tuition online still means that they're online and they're not in person, and I don't see how lowering tuition will give them access to the things that you say that they need. It's not the fault of the colleges that activities usually supplied by their campus can no longer happen because of the pandemic. Labs, dorms, clubs, all of these things that, yes, are part of the normal college experience, but that's not the college's fault.
All right, and time, thank you. So let's go ahead and hear from the other side's rebuttal. All right, whenever you're ready, take it. Well, you're gonna have to take it away now.
So I want to start off by saying that tuition has been increasing in the past many decades. From like 1971 to 72, the average tuition fees at a public four-year institution cost $2,710 into 2019 dollars. For the 2019 to 20 academic year, the current average cost is $7,730, an increase of 285%, which means it's nearly quadrupled, according to an article by Andrew DiPietro on at Forbes. So, and one of the big points in tuition is that experts can't point to a sole reason why that college tuition is becoming more expensive, and some say that it's because of the new amenities that colleges offer, like you said, the college experience, whatever that may be. But Beth Akers, a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institution, says that students don't often understand how the pricing works. They don't realize how much they're paying or how much they're borrowing. So pricing isn't as transparent as it would be if you were buying another good or service. So it's not as simple as where that tuition is going. You're paying for it, and you're paying for that specific like educational process of learning. And yes, you are still getting that same credits, you're still getting that same degree, but you're not getting that same face-to-face help. And yes, we can't go back to an in-person college, because it would be we're in a pandemic, so we can't risk the health of our citizens. But like a lot of students may still be struggling with online schooling, so they often might have to work harder with reduced resources that they might get, like labs, for example. Maybe they did want to pay for those fees, but they can't have access to that anymore. So maybe they're not understanding as well as they would have. So they're having to learn on an online through a screen. So they shouldn't be required to pay for something that they otherwise would have had. And also, you said something about taking funds from, like, where would you get those funds to pay for new online resources that we needed? And there has been examples of other schools reducing tuition and doing it successfully. They can take funds from areas that are not being used because of COVID. For example, maybe certain schools aren't able to do certain sports because of COVID, so they can take money from that and help students in need, reducing tuition. And there's also a lot of students are facing shortfalls in expected revenue. So their schools are turning to cost-saving maneuvers, many of which have already been standard, but they're increasing and being and are going into overdrive, such as reduced number of tenured professorships for the last decade. Low-paid adjunct professors have been a major trend in university staffing to reduce the cost of payroll and benefits, and that's a trend that is most likely to increase. And then high tuitions will most likely impact a college worse than it would because if with a lower tuition, because you're not getting that many enrollments, and that would affect because they would end up with such a high debt, which would then affect the future of like employments in certain professions and in jobs, because they're avoiding that debt, and they want a high paying job, because a lot of the career choice sometimes has to do with the financial side of things.
All right, great job, teams. Let's go ahead and move on here. Whoops, we're not starting right away. Hold on. All right, so we've already used our 2 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and move into the second crossfire. We're going to let, is it correct, Pro, to start? Was I supposed to flip that? Yes, okay, great. All right, so Pro, we'll go ahead and begin. Remember, it's 1:30 and 1:30, so I'll remind you to switch at 1:30. Excellent, here we go.
Wait, is Pro starting?
Yes.
Okay, so you were saying earlier that you don't think that it's right for colleges to be the people that you're seeing as that they're losing money, so they need that money. But how is it the student's job when they're paying for their education? They're not paying for the college itself. They're paying for the books they need, the professors, the students, the learning environment. That's what they're paying for, right? So why should they have to consider? It may sound selfish, but it's the reality of it. Why should they have to consider what the college needs? Because we said before, we mentioned dorms, and a lot of that money colleges would get from dorms. They would get a lot of it from funding from the government, and so much more of that funding comes from the government, more so than it does with tuitions. Tuitions don't pay that much of. They only pay about a quarter of the college functioning, while the rest comes from state and federal governments. So yeah. So my question would be, why do you think that that's the experience? Why you think that college, the students should be the ones held accountable for college
Well,
finances?
that's what they're doing now. They're like I use the example with the $50,000, like the federal aid and the people who can pay full tuition, this is already happening. And so I don't see that just because like the economy has gone down and a lot of people are financially unstable, I don't see why the people who are financially stable should then like do something different than they would have like before the pandemic. It doesn't make sense that they should now um, take all like just because they've lowered tuition, it doesn't make sense for them to not pay the thing that they paid before just because they, I don't know, they don't want to. Like there's so many more people who need the help, and so I don't see why now you should deny people things that they relied on even before the pandemic. So my question for you, you talk all about the college experience when in reality college is just like you get the slip of paper, right? You get the diploma, you go to school, you pay for the tuition for the professors and all that. But how does lowering tuition help give back the student experience that you keep talking about?
Well, it doesn't necessarily give back that it's college experience, but reducing that tuition does allow for, because their students struggling financially, they are able to.
All right, sorry. So I do have to cut you off there because of time. Great crossfire. So let's go ahead. Whoa, full screen here. Oh my goodness. Let's get out of here. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our summary speech pro. So go ahead and let's get this all summarized for about 2 minutes.
So in general, students are paying for way more than they're actually getting. So even though it's not the college's fault that they're not getting the college experience, it's still stuff that they expected to get and that people who have already graduated got in colleges. And so even though it's not it's a secondary it's a secondary responsibility of the colleges, because those teachers are the ones who give them access to internships and give them experience that would make them more valuable to companies in their field. And like say someone does an internship with a research center that they could only have access to because they were able to speak to someone who did a guest speaker at their college. That without actually going to college, they wouldn't have been able to do that. And they're paying for this. And they are also expected to have access to internet at all times, which they can't afford because they can't get a job. And they would have been able to do that if they could stay in dorms and if they could go to college, because the colleges pay for internet there. So in general, this is going to have a long-term effect that people weren't expecting. They aren't going to be able to get a job because they couldn't go to college, which will just have a long-term effect on the employment rate of America. And not only employment rate, but education levels too. And this is going to impact the colleges because they will have a much lower graduation rate and much lower education rate, which will make students less likely to apply to them in general post COVID. So this will have a negative effect on the college as well. So by
All right. Sorry, I had to cut you off there. Okay, great job. So let's go ahead to the other side. Oh, whoops. This slideshow is pretty annoying. All right, so let's go to Con summary speech and take it away.
So, like I said, just like many individuals, families, and businesses, colleges are not thriving in this current economic situation. Sorry. The largest flaw in your plan to lower tuition is it ultimately hurts the people you are trying to help. So colleges, like many businesses, are struggling and can't afford to lose more money. Especially if students are wanting to return to their normal schedules, colleges are going to need money to make that happen. You talk about the loss of experience, the loss of experience that other grades have gotten. But if you want to lower tuition, you're going to decrease the chances of that happening. And colleges can go bankrupt also. So if we want to return to our colleges, we want to return to our experiences, we're going to need to help out the colleges. And lower tuition, like I said, often leads to less opportunities for financial aid. And according to Robert Massa, over 85% of families rely on different providers of financial aid to pay for college tuition. The people we are wanting to help the most are going to be the people that are going to experience the most negative repercussions when tuition is lowered. We are aiming to help low-income families and community colleges that are not middle-class families that go to private colleges. It's not the time to decide college is too much for the importance it has in our world. And your whole argument is centered around taking away money from colleges that is going to families that need it the most. And if we're going to help these families, we need to provide more opportunities for financial aid. We need to get out information that there is financial aid so that they can go and get that, so more people can go to college. And and teachers are also humans and they need to be paid more. You explained how you could pay adjunct professors less, just like it's a casual thing that they do, but we can't just add to the list of families that are affected due to the pandemic.
All right, end of summary speeches. So let's go ahead and move on to our grand crossfire. So so once again, everybody can be involved in this. We are starting with the, help me out, con side, pro side. I really need to write this down for next time. The last crossfire we had con go, right? So let's have pro start. All right. So once again, each side gets a minute 30 starting now.
So why are you valuing the colleges over the students when this is the students are having a much more long-term effect because they're not getting their education?
We're not valuing the colleges over the students. We're valuing the colleges because they provide more materials for the students.
But for the colleges, it's a temporary situation. For the students, they're not getting any, they can't go back and get their education after this because they're already risking a lot, and then they're paying this money and they're going to be in debt. The college, this is temporary for the colleges. The students, this is
temporary for everyone, but there are going to be long-term repercussions for everyone involved. So if you lower tuition, it's going to have awful effects on the colleges later on, and lowering the tuition now also just hurts the people who are looking for financial aid.
Right, and it sounds like you're looking at all the things that can help middle-class families and families that could already pay the tuition, and it's backfiring and hurting the people that we are trying to help the most.
Well, so there are a lot of students that are working currently while they're in school. So yes, if we maintain the same, a lot of those students are going to either have to drop out completely for at least a year, maybe take a gap year because they have other responsibilities other than school. So like there is a large majority. It's not only a few people, because those financial aids are only to help a few of those people. Yes, they're useful, but they can't help a lot, like the majority of those students. Those financial aid grants, they're not that easy to come by. You have it's not that easy to get those financial aids. So by that, you are there's an obstacle between that student and their goal to become whatever profession they're trying to become, because they have to juggle so many things at once, because they have to worry about the finances of paying for college, and many, because they're supporting the family, maybe they're helping their family, they can't handle both, and that also worsens their mental health as well, which is another crisis itself.
Yeah, but their enrollment, it not only affects them and their whole family and their life choices, it also affects the colleges, and then which in turn affects more students that are in their same position. Because if people are not enrolling for colleges, and if people get into colleges and colleges are expecting a certain number of applicants and a certain amount of money for that year, and they just don't show up because they don't have the money for it and they couldn't get their financial aid they needed, then that affects more students, because colleges are going to have to raise their prices and they're not going to be able to give out as many opportunities.
The problem as a whole, the tuition is so high. That's why it's such a problem for people to pay it, and by not decreasing it,
All right, muting everybody. Okay, great job, great job. All right, so let's go ahead. We have your final chance to basically make your final case to myself and the audience here. They are your ultimate judges. So, Khan, you get your the first set of 2 minutes. All right, and then we'll be almost there.
Okay, so I'm sure that most people think of private four-year universities when they demand that colleges lower tuition costs. But the truth is, like we've said so many times, most colleges can't afford to lower tuition. And this isn't because we put the colleges first, and this isn't because we don't care about the students. It's because if the colleges don't have enough money, the tuition will rise because they're expecting a certain number of people, and financial aid will decrease. And financial aid has been available to so many people, and it's really important in making sure that everybody who wants to go to college will be able to go to college. Colleges are doing everything they can to support their teachers, to keep their building clean, and to educate their students. But most of them don't have a ton of extra money. Lowering tuition will not only hurt the colleges, many of whom can barely support themselves, but it will also hurt families who depend on a large amount of financial aid to send their kids to school. American universities didn't create the pandemic, and while students may feel like they're missing out on the college experience, colleges shouldn't be blamed for switching to online school. Everybody right now is going through this. I know that it's hard for a lot of people because they don't get the same things that they did before, but it's not like it's just them. Like every single college student is going through this. And so obviously there are not very many internships, and you can't do the labs, and you can't have access to the research centers, but this is happening to everyone. So even though they don't get what they want now, it levels the playing field for everyone. So it doesn't make sense that you just say, well, oh, they don't get the college experience because they didn't create this and it's not their fault. And everyone is just trying to do the best that they can.
All right, so let's go ahead to the other side. All right. Oh, sorry. Let me start that over for you. All right, go ahead.
First off, I want to start by saying we're not in no way saying that it is the college's fault or the professor's fault that the COVID pandemic exists. It's no one's fault. But we have to consider that like tuition has already been so high in the past years, and like students already struggle with it. And because of the COVID now, there has been problems for both students and professors. And so they're both parties are struggling financially, but we need to help those students because many of them, their only option may be to drop out. And yes, they're not getting the college experience, but we're not talking about the college experience. I'm talking about the actual like education process of learning and having someone there to help you learn. The professors themselves, they don't have much experience with online classes as well, so they don't know they may not know how to teach that well. They may not know like what to cut out the curriculum or how to fit it all into together. So that is impacting that student's education and rendering them from doing what they could have done in previous years or without that pandemic. So they're paying for more than what they're getting. they're paying for more help than they're getting. So yes, it is important that it has become an industry. It's become a business. It's taking money for providing resources to help you learn. So if they're not getting that same help, they shouldn't have to pay for it. It's a service. It's a good and service. So you pay for it, you get something in return. So you can't just say that, oh, because colleges can't afford it. It's like a business going bankrupt. By reducing that tuition, maybe we can get more students in, and it is a temporary situation. So doing it for this year, it won't like harm that much in the future, because you can bring those rates back up, and you can also, they've been freezing tuitions that's stopping them.
All right, got to cut you off. Great job. All right, so that is the end of our second debate. Can we give it up for our teammates? Woo! Our team members and teammates and, all that. All right, so we're going to conduct the poll again. All right, so, for some reason, the Confederate statues poll came up. I don't know why, but let's go back to our tuition poll. Oh yeah, never mind. All right, so I want to reshare the results again from last time. Here is where we were before, 17-3. So let's go ahead and relaunch this poll. Who do you think had the strongest argument? Should universities lower or waive their tuition, or should they not? So are you for or against based on the information you just heard in this debate now? Who argued it the best is what we're going for. All right, 3 more votes waiting for. We're pretty close again. All right, 1 more person we're waiting on a vote. They're thinking really hard. They want to make the right decision, I know. All right, so if this last person can make your vote, otherwise, I'm going to end the poll in 3, 2, 1. Oh, that person just got in their vote. You sneak. Okay, here we go. All right. Let me share the results. It was pretty close. It was, again, really, really close, but we have a clear winner, the against side. So, hey, I want to give it up to all team members. This was a really tough debate to have. My goodness, a lot of feelings about this. So, awesome. Really proud of you. Let me go ahead and take a screenshot so we can celebrate our victory or whatever. All right, so it is currently 11:06. All right, we've had quite a morning. You guys have been fantastic. Thank you, teams who have gone so far. You rock. I appreciate you going first. So let me just take a look at the schedule. Our schedule will be changing. So just keep an eye out. We are all coming back to this Zoom link at 12:30. You're going to have your normal lunch. And on our schedule is cash bail, okay? And then, but actually we're probably gonna put Confederate statues maybe first, since we had to move things around. So my afternoon people, just be flexible, is all I ask. There are quite a few of you that need to ask me some questions during lunch. So how about this? Let's, like, if you don't have any questions for me and you're coming back at 12:30, I'll see you then. Otherwise, if you have questions, why don't you hang tight here so we can chat about whatever you need. All right. So those of you who don't need me, go off to lunch. Enjoy your lunch.